Good evening, and welcome to episode number 14 of the Eve Prosper Market Show. I'm your host, Lockefox, and we have quite the show in store for you. So first, let's start off as we usually do with some show news. First, again, I'd like to tell everyone about the new Tweetfleet Slack server. It's a chat program. It's kind of like Jabber, but it actually works in your browser. They have a great mobile app. They don't pay me to say all this stuff. If you want to interact with the show not on the air, this is the place to do it. There's a link down in the channel info on Twitch. There'll be links in the doobly-doo on YouTube. I post the link periodically on my Twitter. That's the place where the out-of-game, the off-air interaction is going to be. I'm not in-game often enough to really justify doing an in-game chat channel. So that's where we're going to go do that. Also, make sure that you keep tuned. It's CSM season officially. Make sure that you're voting. Go find out about the candidates. Capstable is running an amazing series of interviews, and I'm on their show weekly for a meta-analysis of the candidates on, what we thought they did well and what they didn't do well. Also, just to sort of show things off, I went ahead and did a fix this week to some of the graphs. I know if you open up some of the graphs in-game, they end up looking like this. So we're looking at the arc, for instance. And if somebody flubs a price, if somebody flubs a buy and accidentally sells something way, way, way too low, it totally screws up the rest of the week for scale, right? Well, I went ahead and cleaned that up, and now we actually have reasonably decent scales now, thanks to fixing that. So we should have less weird outliers and better quality data. It was kind of a pain in the butt to do this. So, moving on, let's go straight into the news. The first thing in the news I wanted to share is that we finally got the animation for this fee pool, and just like the Confessor, it is totally sweet. So let me go ahead and pop it over. This animation is thanks to Johnny Pugh on YouTube. He does he's been doing a series of videos with CC stuff. And he was gracious enough to let me clip it up. So now we're looking at the tank mode in all of its vertical glory, and then it'll loop back in just a second. This is the speed mode that they originally teased, and then the sniper mode with the little antenna sticking out the front. So I really wanted to make it like an embedded GIF, but I'm not actually good at making those. So again, back to the tank mode, and this is all courtesy of Johnny Pugh, so thanks again for letting me use that. Moving on, it was the 1-year anniversary of the most costly battle in EVE history, the B-R 5RB fight between Pandemic Legion and friends and CFC and friends. And I don't know if you guys saw any of the articles around that. It was a huge deal last year. I know a bunch of people started playing because of that event. It was really outrageous. And I went ahead, I was working on some things when that came out, but I was also incredibly swamped with real life. But I was participating in making graphs. So, like, for instance, here is the damage inflicted over the progression of the fight. And each of the vertical lines represents a Titan being destroyed. So all the green ones are the CFC destroying PL ones, and the red ones are PL destroying CFC ones. So you can see as the final death toll crawled all the way up almost to $350,000 US. So it's a cool piece of EVE history. It's worth reading up on if you're not aware of it. It was only last year, so I'd hope that most people have already heard about it. Next in the news, for all of you industrial and freighter space truckers, the CCP went ahead and okayed what's called hyperdunking, and this is the practice of using a bowhead as a operating base. And so a ganker will bump a freighter, a ganker's friends will bump a freighter. Freighter will be then aligned very poorly off on a weird vector, and then they will shoot it with like a catalyst. That catalyst will be killed to Concord. They will then warp back. I think they have to get a shuttle next and then lose that to Concord, but then they can go pick up another catalyst from a bowhead and continue ganking the person in very fast succession. So there'll be a bowhead just off of grid, so they can warp away, get the aggro, warp back, finish killing the person. What this means for space truckers is it takes less warm bodies to kill a freighter. And so just keep aware. I know there's an anti-gankers channel hanging out in both Uedama, and I think they're also in Niarja, doing things like remote reps, neutral remote reps. It's also going to be a good idea if you can get a neutral Weber to help you get off of gate as fast as possible. Moving on, the Drifter was also teased today. It's the new sleeper battleship, and there's a lot of speculation around it. For instance, if you see this whole opened up section, looks like a big railgun, like it's totally wonderfully sci-fi. The whole ship is a gun kind of thing. There is a model for that as a weapon, just the rail piece. Saw that on Reddit today. So this is going to be an interesting thing. They also have a second shield buffer, which is rather weird. So these are going to be really interesting to see what comes out of them. I just thought it was cool they finally released the real concept art. So wanted to go ahead and share that. Next, CCP Quant was gracious enough to indulge in a request of mine. I sent him a little over a week ago a request asking for basically mining yields over the last 6 months by region, and he went ahead and posted these two graphs. This one we're looking at right now is by ore type and by region. So you see a whole bunch of mining in the Forge and Domain and Metropolis, of a lot of low ends. And we don't see a lot of we see these bands of activity in I want to say those are in nullsec, but then we see almost nothing in lowsec regions. So it's worth noting. I think it's a rather interesting piece of data. And then the second thing he put out was volume mined by security band. So we see a whole bunch of high-sec ice, for instance, and Feldspar through Scordite all getting mined in high-sec, and then this whole band of nullsecs being mined, and really like almost zero activity in low-sec. So thankfully he released the raw data, so I'm hoping to go do my own analysis, hopefully on next week's show, but he only released it today, and I only got my hands on it like 2 hours ago. So no Graphborn from me yet. Last on the news is that the CSM candidacy officially opened today. So if you are wanting to run, you need to go and register with CCP. You need to have a 300-character platform blurb. You need to give them a valid form of ID. You need to be over the age of 18. And then I think you also have to write a 1,000-character blurb. I don't know where that one's going. So if you're running, get your stuff in Jita Park, get your application in with CCP, get a interview slot with Capstable. If you're voting, make sure to go read the Jita Park, the candidate pages, and listen to the Capstable show for the interviews of candidates you may or may not know. So with that all out of the way, now that we've done all the news, let's move right into Plex. So the theme last week was things were outrageously flat. And this week again, we're seeing incredible stability. As of this morning, I believe Amazon was running a 10% off Plex sale, which should result in a slight dip in the price of Plex. I would expect Plex to dip down to about the 800 level. It might go slightly below 800. Once the sale is done, I expect it to recover back to the 820 level it's at today. Nothing really to say about Plex again, since there's no movement from last week. I find this personally disconcerting because I think that it's an indicator that player activity is flat or down. The low volume sold here compared with just a few weeks ago, the flat price, it reeks of the late spring, early summer doldrums we usually see. And it's January. This should really be the hottest time. This should be one of the hottest seasons for Plex and a lot of market activity. Moving on to minerals. Again, things are actually starting to slide down in the low ends. Tritanium is down very slightly, down from about 6.2. We might even dip below 6.0 this weekend. I'm a little bit, again, this goes opposite to my prediction, as I expected Tritanium and Pyrite to stay level at their high levels that we saw after the IS Boxer reset. But they're drifting down, which tells me that perhaps we overcorrected and we're still seeing enough supply coming through to push things through. So I don't have any reason to tell you that the trend will go any other direction than what it's going now. It's a very weak downward trend, so I wouldn't make any long-term investment choices off of it. On Pyrite, we're seeing that the trend line is just very, very slightly down, even though we saw a uptick over the last week. Again, wherever Trit goes, I expect Pyrite to follow. The interesting piece is in the middle band, so Mexilon, Isogen, and Noxium are all trending upwards over the last week or so. And I don't have a really good I'm not really sure why this is happening. The way I expect minerals to go is that as activity increases, we're going to see the oversupply move across from highest value to lowest value, if that makes sense. So in a healthy economy, like if we were really strapped all across the board, we'd see every mineral going up. But as we saw more and more mining activity, we should see Megasite start to fall, followed by Zydrene, followed by Noxium, followed by Isogen, followed by Mexilon, followed by Pyrite, followed by Tritanium, as the activity grows. And seeing the middle rising while the top is falling and the bottom is falling is completely counter to the expectation. So looking at Isogen, we saw a very hot spike up to 130 over the last week. I expect this to pop over the weekend, settling back down to 128, 127-ish. Noxium is also similarly up. Again, I think this run is a little too hot, and going above 620 is, I think, unstable territory, but we'll see where it lands over the next week. Moving up to the high end, we see that Zydrene is basically down to the level it was before the IS Boxer changes were announced. I don't expect it to fall much further below 420. But if you need it and you can get it under 420, then that's a great price. And then Megasite is having the roll-off I was just talking about a minute ago, where I expect high-ends to be oversupplied from nullsec because they should be flush in high-ends, and they just don't have anything to go put it into, so they'll have to ship it out to high-sec. We're not quite to the level where it's at parity with where it was before the IS Boxer announcement, so I still think it's on track to hit 700. I just don't know when, in a matter of the next few weeks. And then wrapping it up, Morphite has stayed relatively flat. We're seeing a slow decline in the general trend. No reason to think this won't turn around. Again, I still think the volumes are about half what they should be. But that's what I've been saying for months now. So let's move on to fuel. Nitrogen isotopes are staying relatively stable. I think that this 820 price is basically where it's going to stay unless something drastic starts to happen, like an ice interdiction or CFC starts exporting a lot more from their space. There's no reason to think that we're going to see enough supply to start moving this down, and I don't think we'll see enough demand to start moving it up to 840, so I think we're at a steady state here. On the fuel block route, we're seeing the same cycle we see on just about everything else, where we see a hot weekend and a cold week, and we should be expecting the same behavior. So if you were going to buy on a Thursday or Friday and sell on a Sunday, that might actually make you some decent money. But I expect actually to see the price of Caldari fuel blocks be dictated more by the price of robotics, coolant, and enriched uranium than the price of isotopes, because I don't think the price of isotopes are really going to move. Oxygen isotopes are settling in at about 750. This is a bit lower than I expected them to land. I still think that in the long run they're stable at 800, but the market has spoken, and 750 seems to be the stable state price. We see some larger swings in the price of Galente fuel blocks, but again, it's that weekend warrior behavior of spiking on the weekend and dropping during the week. Helium isotopes, which go into Amar towers and capitals, are continuing to slide down, hitting 600 this week. I think that with them so far under 700, I would expect that people would stop mining them, that we'd start seeing a constriction in supply and a slight uptick in prices last week. But looks like people are just going to keep mining them for the terrible ISK per hour. I don't know what the floor is. I expected 700 to be the floor a while back. We hit 600 today. Maybe we'll keep going down to 580. I don't know where the floor of this particular item is. Amar fuel blocks, again, are going to be dictated by the PI components more than the isotopes. And we continue to see spikes on the weekend, falls on the weekdays. So, lastly, hydrogen isotopes, which go into Minmatar, are falling, and they're under... Oh, sorry, they're at the 660 mark. They're a bit higher than I expected, because I expect this to be in less demand than Amar fuel blocks, but we might actually see that there are less miners in Minmatar space than there are in Amar, and the Amarian ice miners just won't stop. There's no price too low, so we'll see. I don't know when the trend is going to turn around. I think 650 is a decent floor, but it might go all the way down to 600. We'll just have to see. Again, nothing new to report on the behavior here. It's still the same, hot on the weekend, cold during the weekdays. Moving on to the major part of the show, regular outliers. Starting with moon components, nanotransistors are up in a big way. I had highlighted last week that platinum was high, and I expected that to reflect in the nanotransistor price. I didn't expect as large a bump as it ended up seeing. Right now, it's in unstably high territory, so I don't expect it to stay above 2,500 for very long. But we might actually see an upward trend in a lot of moon materials, and I'll get to that in just a second. Another one that changed rather drastically was photonic metamaterials took a big dive down. So this goes into your Galente Tech 2 ships, and it's a huge drop in the price there. Much to my chagrin, I had some to sell. I think they're undervalued at the moment. They're poised for a quick rebound. I just don't think they're coming all the way back up to 13,500 anytime soon. I think this is also weird because a lot of the high ends have been holding pretty steady in price, and so to have it drop off so drastically reeks of somebody like selling off a big stockpile and just getting out of the market. So it's kind of a weird response. I would hope that we'd be back up to near 13,500 over the next week, but that's a pretty tall order from where we are. And the last regular component material is ceramic fibers are rather down from where they have been in the last couple of weeks. We've been seeing these very hot peaks over the last few weeks. And we're almost settled back down to about the 260 level we were at before. And I still think that price is too low, but we'll see again where we end up going from here. I expect the price to snap back to about to the 280 level over the weekend. But I don't know if we'll actually go all the way up to 300 over the next week or so. And then the weird trend I've been seeing in moon components and the actual moon goo has been that R16s and R32s, which represent the middle bands, the important enough to extract and defend, but not enough to drop supers on, kind of moon materials, have been tracking up rather hotly over the last week. So the ones that flagged for analysis were cadmium, platinum, and I think there was one more, but I'm not sure which. And we keep cadmium, cesium, platinum, vanadium, I think was also up. And I keep seeing these hot spikes in the middle band of moon goo, and yet no reflection in the price of the final product, which is a little concerning because usually the time to market, the guys who run POS reactions are usually invested enough to go, oh, I'm not going to run that reaction this week because it's not worth doing. They tend to be a little more on the ball than your standard T1 industrialist. With the information from the moon goo, I would expect the prices of almost all of the mid-range component materials to go up, things like ceramic fibers and nanotransistors and hypersynaptic fibers, those kind of things. But I haven't seen it yet. Most everything else has been staying rock steady, so it's weird. I wish I could explain it. It's not quite making enough sense yet. Moving on to PI, the bubbles have finally popped in all of the high-end PI products, except for Integrity response drones, keep climbing. Since I don't have a means to chart the actual build value, I don't know if this is because the low ends have been spiking, or if this is a general demand. After the holidays, when PL was pushing against head really hard, there was a lot more action in the P4 market, but now without the demand for, I think everybody's kind of sitting on their haunches waiting for anything about new SOV with CSM, which is kind of weird because that means we still have like 3 months before we even start seeing anything. So I hope that somebody starts picking a fight, but they may just be sitting and waiting. Again, this week, like last week, robotics have been trending up. This will affect the price of POS fuel. They continue to be very, very high. We're finally catching up with a decent trend line, so we may see a little bit of deflation down to the 65K mark, but it might take a little while to get down there. It could go either way at the point it is right now. And then coolant is also continuing to be on the rise. Again, this is what's going to be driving the price of blocks more so than isotopes, with isotopes staying as flat as they are. Moving on to ships, the last couple of weeks I highlighted the Caldari Navy hook bill for being in a very low state because of Caldari faction warfare cash out. It still looks like there's a significant amount of cash out, but it's moving upwards in the loyalty point stores. So the Drake Navy issue, like we see here, has been starting to decay in value. If you're the kind of person who needs a Drake Navy issue, now's a great time to buy them. Again, the same thing holds true with faction warfare speculation. When there's a huge cash out, it's a great opportunity to buy a bunch of them and hold them. And then once the cash out ends, prices should rebound rather quickly, and you'll be able to ride out. You'll basically be able to take advantage of a low bubble rather than a high bubble to go make a bunch of money. It takes some patience. It takes a while to get all the cashing out done, and you have to make sure not to buy too many items of anything. But it's a great way to make some money off of the all-too-eager faction warfare pilots. Moving on, an interesting one that I haven't seen flagged before is the Mackinac. I don't know if this is because Code has been running some events lately. They've been having a huge presence in Uedama over the last week. And I don't know if they're going after miners again. I don't know if this is a constriction and maybe supply. That's kind of far-fetched. It looks like most of the action's played out and we'll be back down to the 200 million mark sometime this weekend, maybe by Monday. But it was interesting to see a rather hot demand for the last couple of days, more so than usual. I should really go check the kill data. On the last ship I think I have is the Widow is down rather sharply, under 850 million. This is probably due to a manufacturer surplus. When they were up at 900, some more builders probably came to market than should have, and now would be a great time if you need a Widow to go buy a Widow. But it's going to take a rather long time for it to come back to 900. If it took less than a week, I would be shocked. Moving on, I thought this was interesting. The Core Scanner Probe 1s peaked rather high, and I'm not really sure why. These should be in just absurd supply, and so there really should never be a time where you can't get your hands on them. So I don't know what's driving this. Similarly, nanite repair paste should be another extremely stable market. It's so easy to build, but it recently had a very hot spike and is staying north of 22K, which is, again, kind of weird. I expect this to stay rather level, but demand seems to be up. It may also be tied to what looks like a favoring in armor doctrines lately, which I'll get to after this one. It's probably nothing but the Eutetic compact cap recharger has gone way down in price, but way up in demand. And it looks like there's just been a giant sell-off as people have decided that those are not cool to hold on to anymore, probably due to they already got rebalanced meta-wise, didn't they? So I don't know why there was a big dump off. They're selling like hotcakes, and the price is extremely low, but I would not expect the price to come up. It's just extremely hot. Another interesting one that has stayed rather level, but has again exploded in popularity and now burst, has been the Omnidirectional Tracking Enhancer 2s. These are popular for a lot of drone metas, and we saw a couple weeks ago where they popped up extremely high, and then it looks like there's a big sell-off as we come back down to the stable state. I think they're a little undervalued at under 800K, so this would be a good chance to buy in, but with as much volume as is going through the market right now, it's a bit of a risky bet. As I said with the nanite repair paste, there are a bunch of armor modules that have been peaking unexpectedly. We're looking at right now armor kinetic hardener 2s, and we've gone from a very stable market, I want to say at 1.2 million, peaking all the way up to 2 million and staying high up above 1.75 million. If you're building them, this would be a great chance to go sell off a bunch. I don't expect it to stay this high for much longer, but it seems like it's been a popular buyout to reset the price. Another interesting one, which is recovering faster, is the Adaptive Nanoplating 2. These aren't as popular as the Energized Adaptive Nanoplating 2s, and I'm not an EFT warrior to tell you really the difference. But again, we saw a huge spike in value, but we're coming back down to the 2 million mark real soon here, or 200K. I'm not sure which one. My screen cuts off that last digit. Another interesting one that, again, I would expect to stay stable and suddenly became very popular is the mobile scan inhibitor. This allows you to hide the fleet inside a little mini bubble, so the only thing that'll show up on D-scan is the mobile scan inhibitor. This could have something to do with somebody wanting to do more with the new recons with scan immunity. They haven't been a very popular item, so the only advice I have for cashing out is that if you are an explorer who has a buttload of blueprints for these, it might be a great chance to go unload some of them, but I would not speculate in this market because it looks like the average sold per day is about 12. So it's kind of a weird spike. It got my attention. Another interesting one, because it looks like another LP cash out, is the limited Mega Ion Siege Blaster 1s. These are the blaster cannons for Moroses, the meta version, and the market dipped down way low under the, I want to say it's the 150 million mark. And that would be a great opportunity if you were wanting to go buy fit out a Dread. If you're fitting out a Moros, now would be a really great time to go buy some meta guns for it. They are extremely low in price. I expect it to rebound relatively quickly to be back at the 200 million mark real soon here. But if you can get them, go get them. If you have blueprints, don't cash those out yet. Wait for the price to come back above 200 million. And then the last major part of the show, we talk about predictions I've made over the last couple of weeks, or things I should have caught and told you about and didn't because my tools are bad and I should feel bad. The first one that has been in the news is the Gecko, and this has been popular because of the nerf to fighters and fighter bombers. And it's kind of a weird nerf. I don't know if you guys saw it a few weeks ago. There was a concern that the lock time on fighters and fighter bombers were too quick, so that if you wanted to game the DPS, you could scoop them, launch them, assign them, scoop them again, do this whole looping thing to sort of cheat the lock-on mechanic. And I don't know of many carrier pilots who were using that as a viable tactic, but when they announced the nerf, geckos became the next thing in the line to say, okay, well, I've got a carrier and I need to put 10 drones in it, or I need to have 10 drones out. If I can't use fighters, I might as well use geckos. So they've been extremely popular. They only spiked way out of trend this last week. I think they're overvalued at the moment, so if you haven't bought them yet, I wouldn't. If you have a stack, this would be a great chance to sell them if you don't expect to use them. I don't like selling geckos because I think that they fill some really useful roles, and I would rather keep them in stockpile. It's one of the few things I'd like to stockpile, like geckos and Quaif Zero and just the kind of stuff you can't really get anymore. Gnosis, if I really liked Gnosises, I guess. So if you want to sell them, you want to make a quick buck, now's the time to do it. If they settle at the price they are now, I would expect the next time they go up to be another major tournament. I'm hoping that they announce another tournament over the summer. I would hate to have to wait until the late summer again for another Alliance tournament or New Eden Open. I think we might see a New Eden Open after FanFest, I'm hoping. Come on, Fozzie. Don't make me a liar. And they were extremely popular in the last Alliance tournament. I would expect them to be extremely popular in the next tournament, so I think they can only really go up in value unless they change how you get them. And then the other bad prediction I keep making every week is Zor's custom navigation hyperlink keep falling in price. I expected them to turn around last week with the information about the Sveeple coming out. I was wrong. So I'm just going to stop saying things about Zor's custom navigation hyperlink and stop giving you guys bad advice. That is going to pretty much end the show. Before we go, though, I want to remind people that the CSM elections just opened, and I will be running a little bit of a mini ticket. I think you can pick 12 or 14, and I'm going to go ahead and endorse 6. So far, on my list is Sugar Kyle and Steve Ronukin have been on my list since the start. Recently, co-host from Hydrostatic Podcast, Ashtarothi, threw his hat in the ring. He's actually getting interviewed right now by Cap Stable. And then I was impressed with Jane Fillon, with his interview and talking with the Cap Stable guys on the meta-analysis show that he fits with a lot of the things I care about in-game, things like the NPSI's communities, the sort of unofficial amalgams of corps that aren't corps, or, guys who want to hang out on the weekend as opposed to, flying with your corp, that kind of thing. So that's so far my Prosper ticket. I have 2 more slots that I'm waiting to go figure out who to put in there. Still thinking about June Ting. Still probably a pretty decent candidate, but there's still a lot of interviews left to go through. Don't just take my word for it. Go out to Jita Park on the forums to find out about their platforms to interact with the candidates. Go to the Cap Stable for interviews, and they are also doing a weekly panel show talking about the candidates. I'm not sure exactly when voting opens, but once it does, make sure you go vote. If you're confused about the voting system, I suggest looking up CGP Gray's videos on single transferable vote. vote early, vote often, that whole thing. So I think it's important. CSM 10 is going to have a lot on their ticket, especially with the new development cadence, and SOV should be a big topic that we should see tackled by the summer. They're our best chance to really get in front of the devs, so go vote for CSM. And then very last, before we wrap this up, Hydrostatic is running a new lore panel like we did for Rhea. We're doing another one for Tiamat. So we're going to get a bunch of people. You can watch it live on Twitch. It's going to be at Hydrostatic Eve on Twitch. And we're going to have Web Spaceships, Ravas, Morwen Lagan, Anslo, Uriel, and of course the regular hosts, Phi and Ashtarothi. I probably won't be contributing much on air because I'm not really as much of a lore buff as my co-hosts, but I'll be driving the stream. Make sure to tune into that. It will be Tuesday night US or 0200 Wednesday Eve time. It'll also be on YouTube the next day at youtube.com. We don't have a youtube.com yet for that. So keep posted. Go to hydrostaticpodcast.com to get more information. Follow us on YouTube there because we need 500 people to actually get a youtube.com/thing. It's going to be quite a show. The last one was 2 hours. I hope this next one isn't 2 hours, just because it's really hard to fill a stream with 2 hours worth of content. But it should be a really good show. We're going to be talking about the Galente elections and Caroline Starr and the new sleeper tech that they've been showing off. So it should be really, really, really cool. So with that, I've been Lockefox, and this has been the Eve Prosper Market Show. Again, you can catch this usually on Friday nights 0300 game time at twitch.com/HLibIndustry. You can tune in on YouTube anytime at youtube.com/EveProsper. You can catch me on the Tweetfleet at HLibIndustry. If you want to interact with the show offline, make sure to follow up on the new Tweetfleet Slack channel that we've put together. That's where I'll be hosting the community for this show. And again, tune in next week. I know that this particular episode was a day late, but we should be back on schedule next week. No reason to think not. Thanks again for all those who've tuned in live, and I'm going to go ahead and close the show.